Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Hello. Good evening. My name is Blake Fry. I am president of the Hudson Area Chamber of Commerce and Tourism Bureau, and I know many of you in this room, and I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. It's wonderful to see people come out and be a part of a civically engaged community like Hudson is. And it's my honor to serve as moderator for tonight's mayoral debate, and we're thrilled at the Chamber to have a part of this. We also like to thank the Phipps Center for the Arts for hosting our debate again this time around. We were in the same room 2 years ago. Worked out well for us, so we decided to come back to this location. I want to also definitely thank our two candidates, our current Mayor Rich O'Connor and our Common Councilor Alderman John Hoggett, for running, for putting themselves out there. Yes. Running for office is not easy, and once you get in these offices, they can be full-time jobs, even though they're not supposed to be. But when you're in a growing community like Hudson, they certainly are. So I appreciate their willingness to be here and to answer some questions on some of the big issues that we're facing as a community. So far this evening, both candidates have complained about the questions I wrote, so I'm just going to assume that meant they were all really good. So they were just teasing me. We do have a few rules about this evening's event. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for an opening and closing statement. And then we are going to alternate which candidate answers each question first. Each candidate will get a 90-second response, and then the candidate that answered the question first will have an opportunity for a 30-second rebuttal if they so choose to use it. They don't have to. We could get out of here earlier if they don't, but I think they'll probably will want to use those 30 seconds. We flipped the coin to see who would have the preference on who would like to give their closing statements or opening statements first or last. Rich won the coin flip, so he deferred to the second half for the kickoff. Wait, no, that's not how this works. He actually chose to give his closing statement last. So we will be lining up the rest of the debate in that order. So with that said, we're going ahead and get started. I will let the candidates know that once you get within 10 seconds of the end of your allotted time, I'm going to hold up this sign and let you know it's 10 seconds. I knew I was going to be off to your side, so I chose the most obnoxious paper I could find to put the 10-second sign on. So we have a series of issues that we're going to be addressing tonight, and then we won't have an open question period of time, but I ask you also that you hold applause for responses out of respect for both candidates. So we are going to get started, and providing his opening remarks first will be Rich O'Connor. Rich.
Thank you. Just one clarification.
Yes.
Did you say 90 seconds to answer a question?
Yes. Was we? I thought it was 2 minutes. Oh, I'm sorry. It is 2 minutes. My apology. Yes, it was 2 minutes. 2 minutes for 2 minutes. 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
I gotta go home and read.
All right. Okay. It's 2 minutes. Yes. You're right.
Everybody hear me okay? Good evening, everybody. My name is Rich O'Connor. I'm the current mayor here in Hudson, and I am seeking re-election. Tonight, you're going to hear some answers to some very pertinent questions that will be posed to us, and I would hope that at the end of the evening, I will have convinced you that I deserve to be re-elected. So let me first start off by thanking Blake and the Chamber for hosting this event. We really appreciate that, giving everybody the opportunity to listen to who we are and what we have to say. And thank you all for being here, and thank you everybody that would watch after this is over. Let me start out by giving a brief profile of who I am. My wife Cindy is here in the back. She could be up front, but and she and I decided to move to Hudson back in 1999. It was the best decision that she and I have ever made. We had 3 children at the time. We still have 3 children, but we had our oldest was in college, and our other 2 children were 1st and 3rd grade, and they went to Hudson schools. They graduated Hudson High School. And they're all very grateful for the fact that we did move here. This is a great community. We absolutely adore Hudson. We think this is a great place to be. It's a great place to raise a family. And as great as it is, I think it can still only get better. So having said that, one of my priorities is community service. I have a lifelong history of community service. My mother told me when I was very young, very impressionable, that the most noble endeavor is to work in your community, to serve your community. And I've done that throughout my lifetime in a different number of capacities. Here in Hudson, since we moved, I have been on the Hudson Hospital Foundation Board for 12 years. I chair the Hudson Library Board currently. I think I've been doing that for about 4 or 6 years. I can't remember exactly. I serve on the Library Foundation Board. I also served on the Hudson Boosters. As a coach, I served on the board of the Hudson Hockey Association and helped found a group that raised money to create the second sheet of ice at the arena over there. So I've been involved in the community in a lot of different capacities, and I really believe in community service. The reason that I'm running for re-election is because I made a commitment here 2 years ago when we were talking in this very room, and that commitment was to our community. I said there were things that I wanted to get done. Number one priority was to get somebody, developer in, to take care of that dog track that had been sitting idle for 17 years at the time. Number two, I said I was going to keep taxes down. I was going to do everything I could to keep taxes in line, because I'd been talking to a number of senior citizens that said that they were concerned that they couldn't stay here any longer. They were born and raised in the house that they live in currently, but they were being taxed out of their house. And I'd also talked about lakefront development and parking and public safety. I see I've got my 10-second thing here, but John, if you would just kind of move up a little bit so I can't see that. Thank you. Anyway, so that's it. I want to fulfill those things that I promised. We've got a good start, a great start on a number of those, and I'm running for re-election because I want to continue to get those things done. Thank you.
John.
Hello, I'm John Hoggett. You may know that. I would personally like to thank the audience for coming here tonight. That's not always that exciting to come to a debate, in my opinion. I want to say thank you to the Hudson Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. I want to thank Rich for being part of a debate tonight. We agreed that we would not take questions from the audience. I think we both were sighing relief on that. You probably don't know me. In fact, when I say, and I'm out campaigning a lot to say, who's the current mayor now? And I said, well, really, maybe you're not paying attention. So to get to know me, I've been the alderperson for District 5 since 2011. And I'm the current city council president, which basically means when Rich isn't there, I get to fill in and sit in his chair. My values, people have asked me that, and this is a great time to do your own personal assessment when you're running for campaign. Honesty, fairness, open communications, fiscal responsibility, friendliness, approachability, many people find me approachable, dependability, creativity, and strong leadership. My campaign platform is working for you, improving public safety, infrastructure, development, and recreation. And I see these as kind of the 4 pillars of how you tend to focus on the city. Over the last 7 years, I was a strong advocate and voted for full-time fire chief. We didn't ever have one. We had a volunteer fire department with a volunteer fire chief. So I thought that was very important to get that done. Additional police officers, including a drug enforcement officer, not to privatize our EMS, new hire and hopefully upgraded EMS facilities at Ward Avenue. Excuse me, fire and hopefully. As far as infrastructure, I was very key on the Vine Street project. I was the chair of Public Works at the time. I voted for development of Carmichael Ridge and the proposed St. Croix Meadows. These have been controversial developments, but I think they're going to be huge for the city. Recreation-wise, I voted for the creation of the Trail Advisory Committee, which helps us connect our trails to other parts of Wisconsin and Minnesota, and also the development of the Lakefront Master Plan, which we'll be talking about here on other questions. Professionally, I over 20 years of business ownership, development, and management of businesses. I've owned my own software company. Currently, my wife and I, Sarah, raise your hand. She's over there in the second row. Nobody wants to sit in the front row. That have had a vast amount of experience looking at different kinds of business, anyone from Fortune 10 down to small businesses such as what I own. So if elected mayor, I will bring all of my city council experience, professional resources, and my personal values to do the best job I can for the residents and the city of Hudson. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. The first question will be for John. I'll let him get a drink of water here. By the way, the media is in the front row. We got to give him credit for being here. So thank you to River Towns for being here. Also, thank you to River Channel that's here recording the event. When we're done, actually this will be appearing on YouTube starting this weekend. So please share this widely and freely with everybody so they can be informed on the issues. The first question, I start off with a softball for both of you. Well, it is. If elected, what would be your #1 priority for the first 90 days of your term? John.
First 90 days. So in the past 3 years, we've hired a community development director, a finance director, a public utilities director, city clerk, public works foreman, a police chief, and possibly we need a new city engineer because he's recently announced his retirement. My #1 priority would be get all senior staff in a room and regroup on mission, vision, goals, and priorities. Why? Because this gets us all pointed in the same direction. I've had many conversations with many different department heads, and although we do have a pretty good working environment as a whole, I really think with so much new blood, we really got to go back to what the city is all about. How do we get better services? How do we provide better things? So in the first 90 days, and I've asked a couple people would they be interested in doing that, and they said absolutely. So if you're involved in any organization, team building and kind of getting back on our game is something that we need to do. Also, every time we hire new staff, we uncover things that need to be updated. We just updated our fee schedule for the inspection that was 17 years old for building fees, and there's a lot of that that just needs to be uncovered. And every time you hire somebody else, it's a new opportunity to change policies and procedures as well. So first 90 days, regrouping, I think it'll be good for the city and good for residents as well.
Rich, re-elected?
If re-elected, I think that obviously we've already started a number of things in the city, and I would like to continue those. But the most important issue that's facing us right now is EMS, our emergency medical services, and that needs to be resolved. We need to come to some conclusion on that relatively quickly, and we're going to get into that, I'm sure, here in not too long or not too short a period. That's important, and that is at the top of the agenda. There are a couple other things that we need to do. We need to take a look at taxes. We had a budget last year that, frankly, the city council just accepted more or less from our department heads and did not dig into that budget whatsoever until the night that we were going to vote on it. And I had asked them that night that if they would start to dig into it. We needed to reduce taxes. We had a huge tax increase coming our way. It was at about 7% that night. We worked it back to about 5% increase over the course of the evening. And we need people that understand our budget and can dig in and find savings for our taxpayers, for our senior citizens in particular. I think that's very important. One of the suggestions that I would have for that is I've been taking a look at what we have proposed right now for spending coming up, and I think John alluded to it. We on the books right now we're looking at building a brand new fire station up on Ward Avenue, and that's going to cost anywhere between $6 and $9 million. That's not cheap, folks. And that means that we're going to have an increase of about 26 to 36 cents per $1,000. That may not seem like a lot until you try to do the math on that, and that's a big overall increase. That's outside of levy limits, but it is included, obviously, in the overall tax bill that everybody's going to see. So we have a reserve fund right now that's at about $5.5 million, and I'm going to be suggesting that we take $2 million of that, put it toward buying down debt that we already have out there, and then hopefully or apply it to the overall cost of the fire station and try to reduce that cost and reduce the debt service overall, especially at a time when interest rates are still low. And then I will continue working on the projects that I talked about earlier that we've started, the dog track, parking negotiations, and things that are of vital concern to the people in our city.
John, 30-second response.
As far as the taxes go, we had talked about in preliminary budget discussions about adding 2 police officers, and it was decided, originally they'd asked for 3, and we decided that the 2 would be a better choice, a patrol officer and a sergeant, so we needed supervision on potentially on weekends. So this is where the potential overrun came in on the night of the discussion, in which we, sorry Roy, cut goats, and also we decided to cut our website at $7,500 and contemplated a couple more to get close within our self-imposed levy limit of 5.25. So I totally agree that this is the time of the year we need to go back and attack taxes. However, I was going to talk about that during our revenue section, so I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Rich, for this, you're first on this question. Most Hudson businesses are finding it difficult to fill vacant positions. What steps does Hudson need to take to attract the workforce it needs?
You know, this is it's a difficult question, but it's one that is not unique to us. You'll hear that again probably a couple more times tonight. The unemployment rate right now in St. Croix County is about 2.7%. The unemployment rate in the surrounding counties, Pierce, Dunn, et cetera, is also 2.7%. The unemployment rate in Washington County, 2.7%. The unemployment rate in the Twin Cities, about 2.7%. Twin Cities, by the way, remember, has mass transit. They have a way to get people to and from jobs. The unemployment rate is pretty much similar throughout our entire region. This workforce issue is not unique to Hudson. And the only thing that I can think of in order to try to attract a workforce here is to try to bring big business in here, such as Mayo, for example, which you've seen the proposal for Mayo to come in. And that would be probably 100 to 200 new jobs coming in here, quality jobs. And when you can create quality jobs, you can bring quality professionals in here that bring their families in, and those other family members can help fill some of the void that we might have in our workforce. That's part of it. Again, we've talked briefly about the dog track, and we have a proposal in front of us coming our way, I should say, for an employer that would bring 500 to 600 jobs into that facility the moment we get that thing opened up. And again, quality jobs hopefully attract quality workforce people that have families that can fill in on some of these other positions that some of the people, our local businesses, are having a hard time filling. So that would be my focus. And once again, you know, we're struggling. We're all fighting for that same labor, professional, whomever, throughout this entire region.
Okay. I totally agree with the mayor. More business, more jobs. The challenge, and if you talk to any number of people, is what are we going to do about housing? If you talk to Dr. Ouellette from Superintendent of Public Schools, teachers are having a hard time coming here because we don't have enough affordable housing or places for them to live. They're living outside of town, or they're finding it difficult to commute. So I think housing, and we'll get into that when we get into annexation and other things, really is part of our problem. I think it's a legitimate part of our problem. I think you always got to look at wages and benefits. Are we paying competitive wages? One of the things that my wife and I have done is been able to find resources that don't want to commute into the metro. So we've started looking at other parts of St. Croix County. We have employees that come from Ellsworth, Baldwin, Hudson Township, and they really decided, hey, it's way better to stop here than to drive to Minneapolis another 30 to 45 minutes. So Hudson has kind of a unique advantage in that aspect. The other thing that I think is really important to do, and I've done throughout my career, is to work with universities, colleges, technical colleges, high schools, where they can help educate and train for the kinds of jobs that you currently are offering within your community. And that comes in the form of on-the-job training, which often is the case because if I don't have the experience, I can get the job training I need, or creating job sharing environments where I can share a job with Rebecca. Maybe she'll let me be a reporter for the Star Observer. But the other thing that internships are extremely powerful, and we've done it a couple times because interns can become employees. So I think we have to get creative in terms of developing our workforce and not just trying to attract large corporations. That's a great way to do it, but how do we get all these other people with experience, not experience, to get those jobs? I really think there's a lot of opportunities, and we have an opportunity to work with that as well.
Okay. Rich, 30 seconds.
It's hard to rebut somebody that starts out by saying, I agree with the mayor.
It happens.
No, and I think that that's correct as well. One of the things that we have done recently is, for the very first time, somebody officially from the city went over and visited with the extension from the University of River Falls here in Hudson. Most people aren't even aware that it's here. And the director of our community development director and I went over there to talk with them exactly about these types of things. So,
okay. As the person who started that campus for the university, it hurts me to hear you say people don't know it, but you know, we'll work on that. John, this question is for you first. Like many cities across Wisconsin, Hudson is approaching its tax levy limit. What can Hudson do to generate the revenue needed to meet rapidly growing demands for services?
It indeed is a challenge. So I've listed a few types of ways to generate revenue: referendums, grants, fundraising, annexation. You got to be wary of the cost. Reassessment of taxes. There's also the ability to get state and federal tax money. Right now, our reimbursement rate from the state of Wisconsin is woefully low at like $187,000, or roughly. River Falls gets like 2.2 million. So there are options there. The trick is to know when to use what. You've seen we've recently had a school referendum. There's no way you can bond or borrow or get enough money without completely crippling us tax-wise without going to referendum. I believe that our public safety challenges, including the new fire department and potentially EMS funding and equipment and capital improvements there, would be a good place to use a referendum. If it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. However, I think our community is strongly behind public safety, and I think it might be a good opportunity to go to referendum. I personally have been involved in several committees in the city that have received grants from the DNR for urban forestry. Working on the new bridge, we got a grant that's going to go on the dike over here. That was about a $400,000 project. We've received over almost $200,000 in grants from the state of Wisconsin and DNR as well. Grants are a great way to get money. You know, I think we need to be much more aggressive in that. Other things we've seen anecdotally from other communities around the state is fundraising. We do fundraising for our own public safety. There's golf outings for fire, EMS, and the police department, but also we've seen fundraising for special activities like building a new EMS building. So in other words, fundraising is one way. It's not like we're going to go out and fundraising for all of our financial needs. We're not, but it is an option. Annexation we're talking about next, so I'm going to leave that. And then finally, when our taxes get out of whack enough with the state formula, eventually have to reassess. And I believe that's coming up here shortly, because we're not paying enough taxes according to the state of Wisconsin, Rich. So I think that might come down the pike as well.
Rich?
Levy limit is set by the state. We have, as mentioned earlier, we started out 2017 with a mill rate of about $5.03. We had, as John pointed out, a self-imposed cap of $5.25. We blew right by that with last year's budget. And had we adopted the budget the way it was proposed originally, we would have been at $5.36. We were able to take that back down to $5.29 the night of that we passed the budget. Those constraints are provided to us, are imposed upon us by the state. They are state statutory limits. We can't exceed those. And you can only tax so much before you hit those limits. And we have right now, our levy limit is right about $5.60, $5.66. We took up about a third of that in last year's budget. We, again, have a critical situation here with our budget, and it's something that we really need to take into consideration. Once again, as I said, common theme here, this is not unique to us. Our neighbors to the north, North Hudson, is at levy limits. The town of Hudson is at levy limits. The town of Hudson, for the very first time in their history, borrowed money. And they had to do it in order to do their road improvements. And why? Because they tried a referendum and it didn't pass. And then they had to go out and borrow. So referenda, when they work well. We saw how long it took for the school district to be able to pass a referenda, the three of them. It took about 10 years for them to be able to get money to redo the schools over there. We know that St. Joe has turned down referenda to limit the size of their lots in order to raise more money. Town of Hudson lost, referendas have lost over there. It's a difficult thing to do. We just need to rein this in. We need to increase the valuation of our property tax base. And once again, I go to corporate and business because that's the biggest bang for our buck, and that's what I focus my attention on right now.
Yeah, the other thing I forgot to mention, bonding and borrowing, of course, but referendums, like I said, it comes down to, is it that important, or is it important enough to a community to pass? And I certainly understand other referendums have not passed, but I still think public safety is one of those candidates. And believe that it'd be a good way for us as a community to spend that money.
Next question is for Rich first. We've been hinting at this. There's been a lot of foreshadowing so far. Available land is becoming scarce within the city limits. Would you favor annexation of additional land, and if so, for what purpose?
Absolutely, I favor it. The annexation is, certain lots have already been identified. They are in our comprehensive plan that was done, I think, in 2008 or 2009. Those lots specifically are the Atwood property at the corner of Vine and Carmichael, and the Lee property, which is just north of the YMCA Creek Camp. And those properties would be next to be annexed. The question is then what do you do with them? Annexation isn't necessarily a salve for all of our wounds. One thing that's very important to point out is that single-family housing is a net neutral to our budget, meaning that they're revenue neutral, meaning that we spend as much in services for each piece of property as we take in tax revenue. So just by adding to our housing stock does not mean that we have added to our tax base to help us out, to help us relieve some of the tax burden or the cost burden for the services provided. So we need to go with something bigger, and that's an important piece that we look at. So those pieces of property that we're talking about for annexation, Carmichael and Vine, you would probably see some retail commercial on the corner bounding both of those streets, probably see some additional single-family housing in the back of that lot. Down in the Lee property, I think what's being proposed down there is retail up front again along Carmichael, and then some type of probably a multi-family housing, a little denser housing going back a ways, and that's the type of housing and that's the type of development that would actually add to our tax base. That would be a net revenue plus as opposed to revenue neutral. The biggest concern in annexation for us right now is our capacity for our services, specifically storm or sewer water and our sewer facility. We recently had a study completed that indicates that we would have capacity to do the dog track as well as those two pieces of property, and perhaps annexation of some land down along 35, south along 35, so that we could increase the size of our business park, which has been a great boon to our tax base in our city, and that is also something that I advocate for. And hopefully nobody from River Falls is listening in tonight. Blake?
Hi.
Because they have said that they want to annex coming north all the way to our boundaries. We need to be defensive, and we need to get down that way and annex some of that property to increase our business park and increase the tax revenue to our community.
Okay. John?
I also in favor of annexation for many of the reasons that Rich has mentioned. I do know that part of the dog track capacity, the dog track as it currently exists, is already factored into our capacity at our current wastewater treatment facility. And I also know that we have monies available to add new wastewater facilities. However, there are new technologies that are available that can allow us to a holding station or a lift station that allows it to stage it, which helps add to our capacity over time in our current environment. To me, mixed use is an absolute no-brainer on annexation with a bit of commercial, multifamily, single family, and perhaps some executive homes. It makes these very attractive to new businesses. How do you bring in new businesses without having additional homes? Well, this is how you do it. You got to put and create new land and new places and spaces for people to live, neighborhoods, maybe some small parks. The only challenge again is how does it go against city services, and I think we have the ability to grow with that. That being said, with Mayo and other news outlets have recorded or thinking that we'll be growing till at least 2040. So that kind of offsets a little bit of our tax levy conversation, because when you annex and you add new growth, net new growth is part of that levy limit. So it actually will help with our long-term growth and supporting sustainable growth over time. So annexation, really, you have to have it or you become a revenue neutral or revenue negative community, and we do not want that. I am certainly not in favor of that.
Just a clarification, the study that came in on our wastewater treatment facility says that we're probably good until the year 2040. given the things that I just talked about relative to annexation, including a business park down along South 35. And hopefully, and I mean, they've actually said that we wouldn't need the holding ponds for that. So again, just a little update on our capacity.
Okay. The next question is for John first. Remind the candidates we only have 2 minutes for this question. We could probably spend the rest of the night. What steps should be taken to ensure proper EMS staffing, oversight, and facilities?
My eyes are getting fuzzy, so I got to put on the readers. Let's see. I voted in favor of keeping our EMS a public service, and with that came a recommended new staffing model. In January, we switched over from the stipend model where you could be sitting at home and the pager would go off and you'd say, oh man, I can run out and respond to an emergency call. We no longer have that. We've switched over to a paid wages model where we're hiring more paramedics and more EMTs, and they're required to be available on site at the EMS headquarters, which is currently in the basement of City Hall. We've seen some hiccups with that model. We had a bit of a staff adjustment. Some of our EMTs decided to move on and go to other communities because of different pay and other issues that they had. So we were shorthanded for a weekend, and we've seemingly resolved that issue by allowing certain staff to have flexible hours that can work more overtime to cover that. In the transition, as we ramp up with more paramedics and EMTs, we will be having full coverage, and they'll be able to accommodate our needs. You know, as mayor, I would commit to meeting with the EMS chief weekly during this transition. As a business owner and somebody that would launch a new product or change a business model, I believe you constantly need to be monitoring how it works. I know Dr. Unken back there, the business expert, would say that you often need to pivot or understand that if it's not doing this, we got to figure it out this week because we can't continue to make these same mistakes. So I just see it as a hands-on opportunity at this point that someone needs to be watching that, and I would be more than happy to provide that type of service. Finally, we're working on a potential new or upgraded EMS facilities at Ward Avenue, and as the mayor and I know, there's a challenge between should we combine it with fire or not. There's buildings that are currently there. Does it make more sense to leave them separate or combine them? That'll come out in the wash. Right now, combining them is an additional like $2.9 million, so that doesn't seem like the best idea.
Rich?
That's what I know.
You know a lot more than that. But we could go the whole night on this. All right, so look, first of all, we have a very professional, highly qualified EMS service. The folks that work for our city are very dedicated. They do a fantastic job. This is not about them at all. It never was. It isn't today. This is about the crisis that we are in. And again, this is not unique to Hudson. This is going on not just throughout our county, throughout our state. This is going on throughout the United States. And we've got to come to grips with this. We have a situation right now where, frankly, our system is broken. Granted, John has indicated that we do have a new model, and the director, Brandon, has said that he thinks we need 6 months to see if it will work. I hope that it works. I really do, because this is a critical service for our community. But to put this into perspective, our director in the year 2016 put in 4,000 hours. 4,000 hours. That's 2 full-time equivalencies. That's 2 full-time jobs for the director of our EMS. And he's also a paramedic, and that's where he's putting in all the extra hours. In the year 2017, he put in 5,900 hours. 3 full-time jobs. We can't have this. I don't want to be the one, frankly, that is on that call on his last hour on his last shift. And he's done a yeoman's job in filling in for the shifts, which is also a big issue because our staffing has gone down significantly and continuously over the last 5-6 years. 4 or 5 years ago, we had 44 EMTs that were on our roster. As of today, we have 20. And they've got to fill these shifts, and unfortunately, they're having a hard time doing it. Here's what I'm doing. I'm the only one that I know of that's done this. I'm looking at options to fix this. I've talked to the fire chief about consolidation with the fire department. I have talked to the county about a joint effort between the other communities that are having EMS problems, and to see if the county can be an overarching supervisor of a combined joint effort. I've also taken the suggestion of one of the ad hoc committee members about billing services and to see if we were billing everybody the way, getting the most out of billing that we could. Found out that Medicare and Medicaid would not allow us to go beyond what we're already billing. I'm looking for options. I'm a problem solver, and I'm looking for options to solve this problem. And I don't know that anybody else is out there doing that right now.
John.
Actually, we do have an ES ad hoc committee that's working on it. I too have called other fire departments and solicited other resources and opinions. Good minds working on this problem. I believe we're going to be able to come up with a sustainable model that keeps EMS as a public service.
Okay. Thank you. Rich, you're first with this question. Public transit in St. Croix County is a hotly debated topic. Does Hudson need public transportation? And if so, how should it be funded and managed?
Blake, this is your topic. This is your question. I know that. All right. So hotly debated topic. I don't.
I'm referencing the county board races in this instance.
Oh,
there
okay.
You go. There
okay.
You go. Yes.
For all the county board candidates here. I don't view mass transit as a hotly debated topic here. I don't know that we have a need for that. Nobody has called me or emailed me to express a need, and that was true up until about a month ago, and I think that's a great anecdotal statement. I'll point that, and I'll I guess, follow up on that in a minute. But nobody has expressed to me a need for public transportation here in our city, in the city. And I have been quoted in the newspaper having said that several times, and still nobody contacted me saying this was a need. Now, in January, somebody did in fact email me saying, I read what you had to say, that there is no need for mass transit here, or public transportation, and I'm letting you know that I'm the first one to tell you that. And so now I've had one. But there was no need expressed. And we certainly have citizen comments on everything under the sun for anybody that's ever listened in on a city council meeting, and nobody has come up and expressed a need for public transportation. Let me say this, however, if there is a need, and I think I'm more than willing to listen, but if there is a need, here's what I would suggest. I would suggest that we start out with a shuttle and move that shuttle wherever people believe that shuttle needs to go. If it's bringing people from the park and ride into downtown for workers to come down there, I think that's important. If it's to alleviate, or not alleviate, but to try to resolve some of our parking problem downtown by putting people parking up in the park and ride, taking a shuttle, moving them downtown. If it means bringing people from elsewhere, New Richmond or whatever, to come in to work at our stores downtown, we could have a shuttle. And here's what I would suggest that we do. I think that we have an opportunity to redirect some of the hotel motel tax to be able to fund that shuttle and see if in fact it's a viable source of transportation for the people that seem to think that we need that.
I take a slightly different view of public transportation, and I appreciate that we haven't seen a lot of comment on it or people asking for it, but you always have to look at your community in terms of what's coming down the road and what can we do for our community. So maybe we're not going to get a lot of people asking, but maybe take the proactive approach. But I also look at something like transportation, like everything else. If we don't have it right now, maybe we should study it a little bit. And so I would be in favor of kind of the Rich's approach, which is start small and grow if we can. But for me, regional transportation would be key to start. We know that Met Council has already run their routes all the way out to the edge of the metro now, and if that could come across the river, we could connect to that and be able to go back into the city. It is for commuting. We already have roughly, 55,000 cars a day take I-94 to the metro. By alleviating some of that, we also are on the Gateway Corridor. That can go out to Eau Claire, and at some point, we'd be on a public transportation corridor. That does not mean necessarily that we need it within our city, but the shuttle idea, my other notion was that at some point, a small fleet of self-driving cars could be easily utilized, electric, which cost almost no money to run, could accommodate ad hoc as needed transportation for people that don't have cars, for people that maybe are disabled or handicapped or things like that. And then finally, It seems to me that, like you said, with businesses, we already have a couple businesses that are busing people in from New Richmond and Baldwin on an ad hoc basis to make that work. So I really think regional is a great idea. Local, it needs to be studied and or tried to figure out. The last thing I want is for us to become a bus company. I don't think Hudson needs to be that. So that's my views on that.
Just follow up. We have Lyft that has begun service here in Hudson. Uber is recruiting drivers here. And so I just don't want to get ahead of ourselves by making a commitment to something that we may not need ultimately. As you pointed out, driverless cars are on the way, and we do have these other services that are state-of-the-art and are coming to our city or are already here. The biggest concern I have with public transportation is cost. You heard the discussion on levy limits. You heard where we're at on taxation and public transportation at a time right now when the need has not truly been expressed is going to be a big burden to our taxpayers.
Okay, thank you. First, this question is for John first. A master plan for Lakefront Park was recently completed. What parts of that plan should be given priority?
It's funny, when Rich first got elected, he and I stood down at Lakefront Park, talked about thoughts and ideas of what might go on there. I was in favor of developing the Lakefront Park master plan because we had been developing things, how did he put it, organically, which means everyone's got an idea in the first one to implement it, got the idea, implement it, right? It's not a good idea. We need a long-term plan. That being said, I strongly suggest and think, after thinking about this for a while, that pathways and walkways are the first natural thing to connect. People use them. It's like your hardscape in your garden. Once you get that done, you have an idea of where you're going to put everything else. Included in that would be the docks and the access from the river from the other side, because we have countless, I believe you refer to them as anchors on every weekend, of people that would like to come into Hudson but don't have any really good way to do that. And so that provides access from the water to the city and from the city to the water. And we've seen that on the dike as well. We need, right now it's a level 20 challenge to get down to your sailboat dinghy on the dike. Some people risk their lives every weekend. We need better access for those boaters to have safe access. And it would be nice to have some transient balls for big sailboats as well. But so I think paths and walkways and the waterfront is, to me, is an absolute first. And then you get into the recreation spots, like the boat ramp, the volleyball courts, the playgrounds, gathering spots, band shell. I've talked about a beer garden, which I think many people think that it would also be a revenue generator for the park and the city, and would help with continued development as that goes along. And then we get into leisuring areas with benches, trees, and then what I call other. We have the Urban Forestry Board created a tree trek down there. If anyone is taking advantage of it, you go down and put up your cell phone to the QR code and you can look up a tree. And then we're talking about bicycle rentals and kayak rentals. So, I mean, when you kind of start from that to the end, when this is all said and done, I hope it won't take 20 years like Ed says. I hope it takes more like 10. But that's kind of how I see that unfolding.
Okay, Rich.
The lakefront was a big part of my campaign last time. One of the things that I absolutely, and when I say I mean we, my family, absolutely adore about Hudson is the fact that it's a river town. We somehow, somewhere along the line, turn our back to the river, and a lot of river towns did. And I will say this again and again and again until people get tired of hearing me say it, and I'll continue to say it. We need to embrace and enhance our identity as a river town. And which was one of the reasons why we commissioned this study. And John and I did meet, and I said, I want to get this done, John. And John was in agreement. He said he'd been trying to do something for a while as well. So what would be the most visible thing? I think that, first of all, we need shade trees behind our band shell. For anybody that goes down there and watches activities at night, it's very difficult to watch that. I think people would see immediately something is happening. I also think that that dike road is so utilized that we need to do something about that. We need to make it more attractive and safe and bring more people safely up and down that road. The boardwalk, bringing boats in, I think it's safe to say was my idea. I'm a boater, and I watch all those anchors out in the bay every single weekend, and I know in talking to them, they want to come into town and they don't have a way to get into town. I want to see a boardwalk down along the wall that would be right down on the water that will float similar to the docks in the marina, and a 900-foot boardwalk so that our residents as well as tourists can walk that entire distance and enjoy the river down along the river, and then also have that as being accessed for the boaters to come in from the bay. The sailing club is a big part of our town, the aesthetics of our town. They were recently evicted from where they're at because of development going on at the River City Center. I have been deeply involved in relocating them over to the south end of the park that we have downtown. They're right just north of the marina. That's an important thing that we are doing right now that would be part of lakefront improvement. So those things, as John said, Ed talked about 20 years. Hopefully we can get it done in less than that. And that's where the grant money comes in, because there's a lot of federal and state money for waterway development. And that's, I think it's a great thing to do to embrace our identity.
Okay. John?
Yeah, as far as the trees go, this is why we need a master plan, because there were trees there and they were cut down. It's unfortunate that we didn't all get together at the same time. This is what we want to prevent in the future, that, you know, sort of unfettered tree management is not a good idea. I totally agree, we need new trees there. It's unfortunate that occurred. Yeah, Hudson is a riverfront town, and it has been since the middle 1800s. We absolutely want to continue to take advantage of it and make Hudson continue to be a better river town. I agree.
Thank you. Rich, questions for you first. The landscape of Hudson's downtown central business district is rapidly changing. What steps can the city take to ensure downtown Hudson remains both vibrant and in touch with its history?
Well, that's a great question, and it's an important piece, again, of identifying as a river town. So Bob Dylan had once said, if you're not busy being born, you're busy dying. And we need to continue to renew and refresh what we have here. And that's what makes us so attractive, and that's what has been so successful to the businesses in our downtown area over the past 10 years. We have been through a time of renewal and refreshing of our downtown area. Some of it may not have fit in some people's ideals of what downtown should look like, but we do have an ordinance in place already that dictates what can and can't be done relative to colors and types of materials being used, height, yeah, you got it, height, and things like that. We already do have a city ordinance in place. Now, having said that, I have been, again, involved with redevelopment discussions downtown. We have a TIF district, tax increment finance district, over at the dog park, which helped us bring and attract developers in to the dog track. I said dog park, I meant dog track. We are suggesting the same thing for downtown, a TIF district for development in our downtown area, and once again open up, especially on First Street, open us up to the river where our front door originally was, and continue with development downtown. We have some projects that are already on the drawing board where apartments are being proposed for downtown. You probably are aware of some of the buildings on the east side of 2nd Street that have already been bought and closed down in anticipation of that. In addition, there would be a parking ramp that will go in there to help alleviate some of the parking issues that we have, and we're currently negotiating with those folks right now. So again, refresh, renew, embrace who we are, our river identity, and stay true to the ordinance as far as aesthetics. You didn't even put up the 10-second.
No, you didn't. No. Actually, you're at 1 minute, you're at 2 minutes and 0.77 seconds. So there you go. Go ahead, John.
Timing.
Yeah.
Downtown Hudson. I think I'm with Rich on a number of things. Reestablish what is our historic view, 2nd Street. When you drive through Hudson, downtown 2nd Street is it's the magic. It's the street that really quantifies the river town. In 1866, Hudson burned to the ground because most of our buildings were wood. Only Ultimissimo survived. Everything was rebuilt with brick. Surprising. And the reason that river town continues to thrive and look that way is because most of us as property owners downtown continue to make the commitment. The building that my wife and I own up here on the corner used to be white and mint green. We turned it into tan and stucco to match and fit in with the Phipps Center. And so it goes. So I think to me, focusing, Second Street for sure, and then, like Rich said, the First Street side, getting back to what is the river, you know, originally the railroad ran through town for a while, so tracks, depot, all of that, and then the toll bridge that came across the dike, all that sort of turned First Street into commercial, non-usable space. Well, all that's gone now. We don't have to worry about that, and I think we've done a really good job at continuing to update and maintain that. Hudson, I don't care where I go in America or other places, people know of Hudson. Maybe they drank here when they were 18, but a lot of people come here now because they enjoy it. Hudson's a very popular city for that reason. A lot of people now come here from Stillwater for that reason. We've still maintained our charm. I really think that is something that we have to really be vigilant about and not you know, lose sight of that, because we really have something here that is special.
Rich?
There's nothing really more to say. I think it's
we love Hudson.
It's all been said.
And now for a complete change of pace. John, drug addiction and mental health are two of the biggest issues facing our population. How can the city of Hudson serve as a leader in addressing these problems?
In my entire debate prep, what I wanted to do was not just sort of wing it. I have now spent a fair amount of time reading about these challenges, which I've known about, but not really known about how hard it's become for us. The fact that our police officers have to drive over to Winnebago at the Mental Health Institute in Oshkosh because we have no rooms around here for mentally ill patients that need to go into a care facility. We actually legally can go into the metro, however, their beds are normally full, so we have to take 2 officers, go across the state. And as that was presented to me, think about you as the mentally ill person that has to go 4 hours, and then them to come back. This isn't unique to Hudson. This is a Western Wisconsin regional problem. And I know the county has been working on it. I think we've had the Attorney General in here. I know Rich has participated in conversations. This mental health issue, combined with our opioid crisis, really has us in let's just call it a pickle. They have counties around us from the drug standpoint where kids are sleeping in people's offices and other parts of care buildings because there's no housing for them. Wow, I guess my big note here is we really need to embrace this as a community to figure out how we can get smart minds in the same room and come up with ways to be able to help our community and those that are not only suffering from mental health, but drug addictions, and our law enforcement who's really spending way too much time on this. It's becoming a cost overrun in our police department. I think that one of the things I said, how does this opioid addiction, in my mind, travel so quickly? And I read an article from our new police chief that basically says people are allowed, they forge prescriptions and are able to do that very easily, and then they take that and get it filled multiple times at multiple pharmacies. So you can quickly see how easy your prescription could get out of hand and go somewhere else. I didn't realize that was going on. These are the kinds of things that really make this a challenge for everybody. We need to work harder.
Rich.
So clearly this is a problem here, and John pointed out, and again, it's kind of a repetitive theme. This is not unique to Hudson. It's a serious problem, and it's one that has touched the lives, I suspect, of everybody in this room, whether it's the mental health issue or the drug issue. We certainly have had friends of our kids who fell victim to the opioid crisis, and it's not an easy thing to remedy, and it's very difficult to understand. I can tell you some of the things that have been done is that, again, John had pointed out that we did hire a drug investigator. He and I both supported that, very heartily supported that. Our police department is part of the St. Croix Valley Drug Task Force, and John referenced I was involved in some of the discussions with them. We also have a drug give-back bin over at the police station for people to drop their unused, unwanted drugs off to keep them out of the hands of our young adults. And Narcan has been a big problem, or not problem, but addition to our police force to be able to reverse the effects of an opioid overdose. And they have successfully used that twice now. And so, I mean, we're doing things that need to be done. Our county is our delivery system generally for health and welfare. And we need to make sure that we are partnering with our county in order to come up with the most effective, efficient means of dealing with this very, very serious issue that we have in front of us. So it's ongoing, and some of this stuff that we do is fun. Some of the things we've talked about here tonight is not so fun. This is one of them.
John? Anything I forgot? I guess the challenge we're going to continue to face is this isn't slowing down. And what we need to do, one of the things I thought of was with Mayo coming to town and perhaps other healthcare providers is how can we partner with somebody to perhaps find more short-term psychiatric services like a transitional space. And right now it's a little bit of a challenge because there's reimbursement issues, but can we partner with healthcare to at least provide a temporary space so you can go and then eventually transition onto somewhere else so our law enforcement will have a way to deal with that at least immediate crisis of time. So that's kind of my additional notion.
All right, thank you. Final question. And this is for Rich first. The introduction of an inclusiveness resolution sparked strong feelings, I would say, on both sides of that issue. In your view, is Hudson a sufficiently welcoming place to those with diverse backgrounds?
My answer to that is very simply, yes, it is. I think that we are a very welcoming community. I've found that, I've seen that, I've heard that from many of my friends that have come over here. And unfortunately, are there bigots in our community? Absolutely. Do we have racists in our community? Unfortunately, yes, we do. We can't legislate against that. It doesn't work. What we need to do is, if in fact, with these people that we have a problem, is try to change their hearts and minds. And how do you do that? And I believe it's truly through personal, social interaction. Let me tell you, my experience came from the east side of St. Paul. I was in the state legislature back in the 80s when the Hmong population was first being transplanted into the city of St. Paul. There were some very strong feelings over there, very strong feelings. But through a lot of groundwork, people rolling up their sleeves, block clubs, as I said, personal, social interaction, meeting people, getting to know people, and understanding that we're all the same, we're all alike. That's how you change attitudes. We can't legislate against this. But what we can do is exactly what happened in St. Paul. I'm very proud to say that I was the campaign manager. I ran the campaign for the very first African-American elected citywide in the city of St. Paul. And again, it had to do with changing the hearts and minds of the people in St. Paul. For the very first time, they elected somebody that was black. Same thing with the Hmong community. I was deeply involved with Neil Tao, who was the first Hmong elected citywide in the city of St. Paul. And that was very rewarding as well. But that's what it was all about, by having block clubs, for example, where you invited people, new people, people from diverse backgrounds, different countries, invited them into your home with your neighbors, and everybody got to know one another. That may sound simplistic, but frankly, folks, from what I've seen, that's the only way it can be done. We just can't legislate against this. It's all about changing the hearts and minds of the people that would see something in a different way. And that means that we have to roll up our sleeves personally and get involved with the situations that we see where people are affected in our community adversely and help to change that.
John?
You're beating the 10-second thing every time.
Hey, we went a little lower, but everybody's been pretty good, so I'm not going to get too strict here.
I do want to say, Blake, that I love the questions. They're so easy and just doesn't take much time to prepare.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm here for.
Is Hudson welcoming? I would also say yes, but not for all of us. We need to raise the bar, in my opinion. And the reason I say that, and I agree with Rich, you can't legislate it, and you do run into people that don't like other people. That's unfortunate. But to me, we can't tolerate bad behavior. It's every time I see a new flag stolen or burned, or hear about stories of people of racial diversity running into issues at school or other things. It's sad. We all can do better. I don't think, and I think most everyone here would probably agree that we can and do and mostly should treat our neighbors like we want to be treated ourselves. It's the golden rule. And I don't have the diverse experience the mayor has been supporting racial or minority candidates. However, we have been seeing a large amount of people showing up at citizen comments looking for a voice, and I think that's great. I really like to see people wanting to participate somewhere. My notion is, hey, let's come up with maybe an ideas forum or something that we can go somewhere else and all just express views in a safe environment where we're not going to judge each other. We just want to talk about what we think. Because, and I found this at my own church recently. I haven't gone to church in like 20 years, but now I go to church. That it's a safe place to have conversations with all mixed viewpoints. And we really, I think Hudson could really benefit from that. Not that I don't appreciate citizen comments and people wanting to express it, but I think we could really expand that and do an even better job at helping us come together. Most of us tend to hang out in places where we have the same ideas. So let's find a place where we can share new and different ideas. I think Alan Birchall always said, I think we have more in common than we don't. So maybe we could try that. And that's kind of my notion. Is Hudson welcoming? I think we could raise the bar, but I think we can come together and settle on that. And there's one thing I really got to say. I am in no way, shape, or form in favor of sanctuary city, and I don't really understand how those would come into play or why or how Hudson could even become one. But I really want people to know that I don't really favor that. It just comes up all the time, and I'm like, people are staring at me thinking I want a sanctuary city. I do not. I really can guarantee I don't. And I don't even know how that would be possible with modern law enforcement and the way we have now. It would be so easy to track and understand people, whatever they're doing. So that's all I got to say. I beat the 10 seconds like the mayor.
Right, yeah. All right, 30 seconds, Rich.
I don't see disagreement on this issue. We both believe, it sounds to me like we both believe that Hudson is a welcoming community, and yeah, there are people out there that have had a different experience, but that does not speak to the overwhelming majority of our community. And I have seen personal interaction work very well. It's worked in our neighborhood with the people that all built their houses at the same time or moved in since then over in Stone Pine. We've got about as diverse a neighborhood as we probably have in Hudson, but nobody has a problem there, and it's because of everybody knows one another. We all get together and we all have each other's backs, and that's the most important part of community. That's what community is. So I guess there's not much more to say. Okay,
thank you. Before we get to closing statements, I just want to thank the two of you for actually answering the questions that were asked. I'm so used to watching presidential debates where no matter what the question is, they go back to their talking points. So I appreciate you guys addressing what are some difficult issues facing our city and some great opportunities facing our city as well. For our closing statements, each candidate has 3 minutes, and we will start with John Hoggett.
Thank you, Blake. I would like to thank the Hudson Chamber of Commerce for hosting, Blake for moderating, does a great job, Mayor O'Connor for lively debate, and our audience for being present here today. Thank you for coming. So the final question remains, and that is, why should you choose me as your mayor? As you've heard today, both the mayor and I are tuned into Hudson's current projects. We both have leadership experience, and each of us is clearly qualified to do the job, in my opinion. In my opinion, after it is all boiled down, it really comes to one main issue. That is the privatization of our common public interest in our public safety departments. Last June, council voted 5-1 not to privatize our EMS. However, that also means that we came within just 2 votes of privatizing our EMS. Had 2 other council members voted in favor of it, the mayor would have been the tiebreaker, and I'm pretty sure he was going to vote for privatization at the time that he expressed that to me. It became crystal clear to me how quickly and easily this might happen. I made a promise to myself that this is something I can't let happen, and I won't if I can help it. I promise that I will work tirelessly to make sure that it does not happen. If you think this issue is over, I don't agree. While sitting in Common Council, we are constantly being reminded that if EMS can't be sustainable, we may have to consider other options. I see our public safety as a group of three: police, fire, and EMS. I don't consider EMS something that we can just cut out of the budget. If any of these departments truly becomes unsustainable, leadership's job is to make them sustainable again. Just like I would never consider privatizing police or fire, I will not vote to turn our trust and support of EMS over to private or for-profit corporate interests. Rather, I will work to make sure that our EMS department has the resources, systems, and support it needs to become sustainable for the long haul. Remember that private corporations that have a legal allegiance to their shareholders, not their customers. My slogan is working for you. This means that I will make sure our city supports its residents' interests first. This promise includes your safety and supporting the departments that provide it. Thank you.
Rich.
Again, also, I'd like to thank everybody. Thanks again, Blake, for hosting this. Thank you all for showing up here tonight. At the beginning, I said that I'd hoped that through my answers, I could provide an easy opportunity for you to vote to reelect me. I hope I've achieved that tonight. I want to focus on a couple different things. First of all, I want to thank my wife and family for indulging me for the past couple years and for allowing me to seek re-election. I think that's obviously very important to have the backing and support of your family. This is about achievement. I've been in office for 2 years. This is about what a leader does in the past 2 years. It's about the type of achievement that has been accomplished and the things that have begun. We had a dog track that sat idle for 17 years. I said, as soon as I get in office, I'm going to do something to make that productive and get it on the tax rolls. That's exactly what I did. I brought developers in, met with them, and we have a developer right now that is very close to closing on that property. I'd also said that I was going to work on parking. Parking is something that I'm negotiating with right now. One of the developers downtown that I referenced earlier with the apartments that he's planning would include a parking ramp that can help ease our parking situation downtown. I'm also talking with another developer, private developer, again, not that the other one wasn't, but private money at the Wells Fargo lot to try to provide additional parking spaces at that lot as well. I talked about Lakefront Park, and we've begun on that, and I also said that I would work hard to keep your taxes down. And frankly, I was the only one that fought on your behalf to keep taxes down in that last round of our budget cycle. And I think that's important going into the future. As you heard, we're approaching levy limits, and taxes are a very critical piece of what we're facing right now. EMS, I am committed to making EMS work. As I said, we have a great group of people, and I've been committed to them. But we do have to look at options. If this doesn't work, if this option that was recommended and proposed by our current director does not work, it means that we are going to be in a very critical situation. People here, I think we talked about this. There have been periods of time where we have not had a single ambulance staffed. Okay? Periods of time where we have not had a single ambulance staffed. And that was this year. All right, going into the month of March, 60% of the shifts for EMS were unfilled so far. We don't know about the rest of the month yet. That's a critical element of what's going on here in our city. I believe John is absolutely supportive of EMS and committed to a quality EMS public safety. So am I. But it is a very serious issue, and unfortunately, folks, most of the information isn't out there. I'm committed to what the way the council voted, 5-1. I don't have a vote on that. As John pointed out, I break the tie. But that's what the council decided to do, and we have been working hard to try to make this system work because that's what the council wanted. But we have to look at what happens in the event that it doesn't work. And I am the only one that has looked at other options and brought other people in to see what we can do without selling our service off or privatizing it. So that probably is the only issue that separates the two of us right now, a major issue. And I believe that it needs to be run according to a budget. We've got to live within our means, and we have to look at all of our options. So thank you all very much for being here. I hope that I've convinced you to vote for me, and I'll see you out there on the campaign trail.
All right. Yes. I asked you to hold your applause. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I was going to ask you to give a round of applause for these two dedicated public servants. Thank you, John. Thank you, Rich, very much. Thank you all for coming out. Remember to vote coming up in our spring election. I know if you're here, you're not going to forget that date, and have a safe trip home. And on behalf of the Hudson Chamber, thank you all for coming out. Thank you.